We have been working with a model class consisting of three properties: ID, name and fees, if you recall in our previous tutorials. All the three properties have participated and have been exposed in JSON communication through every web API that we have discussed and written in the past tutorials of this chapter. This is called overposting. I'll come to the details of overposting in a moment. Now let me just give an introduction. But what happens if there were a property such as an email address that we did not want exposed? This tutorial presents a solution through the concept of a data transfer object, where you can prevent certain properties of an object from participating in the web API process from the process of JSON communication. Let me briefly discuss about overposting. We know that model classes are exchanged as parameters and response objects. A model class is sent as a parameter of a function when you call a web API, and in the response the same model class or a collection of those objects is returned. The ASPNET Core engine, it takes care of the translation of a C# type to a JSON string and vice versa. So every public property of a model is exposed in this communication. I say every public property. The entire object is shuttled between a client and a server, even if a small subset is relevant. This is called overposting, when you are sending entire thing instead of just the required part. Overposting might be undesirable for various reasons. One of them is bandwidth, and more importantly, it could be due to security also. So what are the solutions to this problem? One solution is to use a shadow model class that contains just the properties that we want exposed. A shadow model class with only the properties that are relevant for our communication. Such a class is called a data transfer object. Consider a model class such as this one. This class is the same doctor class that we have been working with, except a new property for email that we want to hide from every web API communication. The solution is to create another record class called Doctor DTO that contains all properties of doctor except email. So create a Doctor DTO class that contains all the properties that we actually want and exclude the properties that we want to hide. Notice that we have used the record keyword to emphasize the fact that this is just a read-only type meant for data exchange. If you are not familiar with this keyword, then you can either go through the new C# syntax, or you can equally use the class keyword for that. It won't impact much on our learning right now. This record also contains a constructor that is used for translation of a doctor to a Doctor DTO. Let us try to understand a few rules. Then we will show an implementation, but implementation will come in the next tutorials. But let me now suggest some rules for there. I have written a few rules for using a DTO class. The first is that whenever your API takes a parameter of type doctor, replace that parameter by Doctor DTO, because your client will communicate only through the properties contained in a DTO. If you have written a API that accepts a parameter of type doctor, now it is time to replace that by a parameter of type Doctor DTO. In fact, it will be more meaningful also to use a DTO, because only these properties are going to participate in our communication. And inside the body of the function that will handle your request, the Doctor DTO can be converted to a doctor by copying the respective properties. You can read the Doctor DTO and convert it into a doctor object, which you might be requiring to use somewhere in your EF core, in your entity framework core communication. I will show the details of this in the next tutorials, but right now the second is that whenever your API returns a type of doctor, replace that by Doctor DTO, By using its constructor, the constructor will convert your doctor into Dr. DTO. And thirdly, wherever your API returns a